Orijinal olumsuz reaction. This is the Mollusk Tier List by channel Tierzoo. Yeah, okay, this is gonna be a fun video about sea life. Octopuses and shit, cuttlefish. Somebody's already pissed off in the comments. Octopus lady, who's pissed off why octopus wasn't at the top. Alright, this is gonna be interesting. Let's do it.
Mollusks are one of the most diverse factions in the entire game. Indeed, much more diverse than I think most players realize. They are extremely popular both among casual and competitive players, with some builds demanding incredible levels of skill to pilot, while others are practically AFK. And with so many different potential mollusk builds to choose from, it can be difficult to know which builds are actually competitively viable in the current meta. So today, we're going to go through the Mollusk Tier List. While I attempt to cover as many of the popular well-known builds as I can, mollusks are an extremely broad category, second only to arthropods in terms of number of individual members.
Alright, damn, look at that. Okay, I didn't know mollusk was this diverse because I remember when he put up that post to vote. I don't think I voted mollusk. Tierzoo always surprises you.
So inevitably, some are getting left out of this video for the sake of time. Still, by highlighting standout builds in both the high and low tiers, hopefully I can give you a good understanding of where the mollusk faction fits into the current metagame, and will be able to fill in the gaps for yourself. But before we dive into the tier list, what is a mollusk? And what are their common attributes? Mollusks are a huge group, encompassing all gastropods, all bivalves, and all cephalopods. While every group has its outliers, most factions at least have some consistency in their base stats. Birds tend to have pretty high mobility, mammals tend to have high intelligence, arthropods high defense, and so on. With mollusks though, it's pretty hard to pin down any obvious through line. Pick any one stat and you can probably find a mollusk both at the top and bottom of the charts. But one thing
So why are they pitted as mollusks? There must be some similarities for them to be in that category. Or somebody just fucked up.
you will not find is a mollusk with base will vary greatly between builds. One thing I've noticed is that just about every mollusk has something extreme about it, with at least one stat being either incredibly high or abysmally low. But anyway, given just how hard it is to generalize them, we may as well just dive straight into the tier list. At the bottom of F tier, we have the common slug. Now, while this build may look like it has all the downsides of the snail without any of the benefits of the snail's protective shell, yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it looks like. The garden slug genuinely has some of the worst stats in the entire game, with even its best stat being fairly mid. Its only defensive ability is its slime, which does help ward off attacks from insects. It's a double-edged sword though, as their slime also leaves a trail, making slugs one of the easiest builds in the game to track down. Now, I will admit, there are some advantages to not having a shell, the main one being that slugs can slip through much smaller cracks, and hide underground much more easily. However, since they need to come out to feed anyway, this doesn't really help them avoid predation all that well. So with all these negatives and pretty much nothing else going for them, the snail without a shell is going in F tier. Next in F tier we have the common clam, a build that exemplifies the extreme
Like with everything that makes slugs basically worse. At least there's some positive to it, right? Like carnivorous plants and things like they can just slip through that shit.
stat lines I was talking about to a T. With no eyes, terrible movement abilities, and no attacking moves, and no brain, the clam has to rely on only two stats, both of which are quite high. The first is their stealth, on account of the clam's surprisingly decent burrowing ability. By wedging themselves into the seabed, they can stay out of sight from most potential threats. But if an enemy manages to find them in spite of this, the clam has some of the heaviest armor of any mollusk, being able to deflect some pretty substantial damage. But with no ability to counterattack or escape, eventually a persistent attacker will deal enough damage to spell game over. Well, okay, technically clams can move, but I mean, come on. In the current meta, this just isn't enough. What's worse is that even though clams can burrow down to hide, in order to survive they need to filter feed, and to do that, they must poke their most vulnerable weak point above the surface of the seabed, giving away their hiding spot and opening themselves up to a devastating critical hit. At the top of F tier we have the common snail. The The garden snail has most of the same weaknesses as the previous two entries on the tier list, but slightly less severe. Snails are every bit as slow and non-threatening as slugs, but they do at least have a shell to help block attacks. They can even use their shell to shield bash attackers in a pinch, though this doesn't do much damage. However, similar to the clam, because of how slow their movement speed is, and how weak their counterattacks are, eventually an aggressive player will be able to punch through their defenses. So they're not the worst of the worst, but compared to some of the unique and powerful abilities we'll see higher up on the tier list, the basic snail build just isn't going to cut it. At the bottom of D tier we have the Scallop. The Scallop is essentially a more decked out version of the clam. Though it has a lower base defense stat than the clam, its weaknesses are also much less pronounced. Instead of being completely immobile, Scallops oddly enough have the jet propulsion ability, something usually only found in cephalopods and box jellies. Though it has a high cooldown,
It's a Disney old movie, like, look at this shit, look at, and just like teasing and just like using the jets to just propel through. Yeah, check that shit out.
this ability gives them an escape option if they're ever under direct attack, something every other build on this list so far desperately needs. Of course, being able to flee from battle wouldn't do them much good if they couldn't see attacks coming, but thankfully Scallops also spec into primitive eyes, enabling them to detect predators and reposition themselves accordingly. In theory, anyway. One of the issues with simple eyes is that even the most basic stealth techniques, such as, for example, moving very slowly, can get past their danger sense, resulting in Scallops getting regularly bodied by starfish. So while they're definitely a bit more versatile than some mollusks, I can't give them too much credit. Next in D tier, we're going to have the first of the cephalopods on our tier list, the chambered Nautilus. The Nautilus is a slow-moving, armored scavenger build that sustains itself mostly on detritus and carrion that is sunk to the bottom of the sea. While being able to swim while rocking a tough shell is impressive, their terrible swim speed shows just how power-crept this ancient build has gotten. Their perception stat is also pretty mid, especially for a cephalopod, which on average have some of the best vision of any marine build. The Nautilus used to be a much more popular build until seals and sea lions were added to the game, as their high agility and armor-piercing bite gave them a crushing matchup versus the Nautilus. So, while it is impressive that the Nautilus has made it through some of the roughest balance patches in the game's history, the fact that they were driven to the depths by seals doesn't scream high tier to me.
Yeah, the way tier system works is, I guess, at the current time, at the current meta, how are they faring? So it makes sense them to be a D tier, right? We need to ask, like, throughout the eons, whatever, like throughout the times, how much something has survived. I mean, that must mean like it's something at least, right? Like some credit, like Tierzoo said. But yeah, this list is about like the current meta where there are seals, yeah, D tier. So there are literally species right now that might get even more nerfed or completely eliminated in the future because of shit like this. Like, that's insane.
First in C tier, we have the geographic cone. This marine snail build rocks pretty much all the same strengths and weaknesses as your average snail, with one major exception. This snail can one-shot just about anything. The geographic cone has a venomous harpoon which it uses to hunt fish, but it can also use it to defend itself in a pinch. Now, the geographic cone is still incredibly slow and really not all that stealthy, so actually landing a hit on a fish is a bit of a challenge. Still, this is one gastropod you really don't want to underestimate. The cone snail's harpoon pierces armor, so any starfish main who thinks that all mollusks are easy pickings is in for a rude awakening.
Damn,
Next in C tier, we have the Dumbo octopus.
I like this is just like video game, like how certain things are suck so bad. Then certain thing just sucks so bad, but it has one strong weapon, like one massive shotgun, so it's a C tier then.
This is one of the strangest cephalopod builds in the entire game, and lacks a lot of the signature abilities players normally associate with the octopus. But it also has a mix of other unique traits that normal octopuses don't. You see, the Dumbo octopus is a deep sea build, and on that server, the normal stealth techniques simply don't apply. Color changing and ink clouds aren't going to do a player any good when most of the major threats aren't relying on vision anyway. So even though those abilities are what the octopus is best known for, unfortunately the Dumbo octopus has to find other ways to remain hidden from predators. And unfortunately this means it needed to make even more trade-offs. Rather than using jet propulsion, which is a conspicuous and turbulent, but incredibly effective movement ability, the Dumbo octopus swims using large fins on the side of its mantle. This is significantly slower, but a great deal stealthier too. This makes it too slow to catch fish, but it's still able to thrive off of its winning matchup versus crustaceans. Its webbed tentacles are perfect for surrounding and capturing targets on the seafloor. So definitely an interesting build, but by having to sacrifice so much of what makes the octopus so overpowered, the Dumbo octopus is definitely one of the lower.
Yeah, I mean the size could benefit. Like if it became like really bigger in the future, let's just say a size could make this really overpowered in a way. So yeah, the sacrificing the shit that the octopus has, like yeah, that doesn't make sense at this size. But if it were bigger, like you can see the level of shit this would be able to pull.
Tier 1s. And at the top of C tier, we also have the first squid on our list, the bobtail squid. This is another cephalopod which uses a fairly unorthodox ability to boost its stealth. As one of the smallest cephalopods in the game, the bobtail squid really cannot take any hits. So, in order to avoid most of the ocean's major threats, the bobtail buries itself during the day and only comes out at night. However, even under cover of darkness, the bobtail squid would still be at risk of being attacked. Though it's somewhat counterintuitive, on a night where the moon and stars are unobscured, detecting another player in the water isn't as hard as you might think. The shadows they cast in the water are highly visible and give away a player's location immediately, making it very easy for predators lurking below to strike. The bobtail squid deals with this by speccing into an extremely rare and strange ability, bioluminescence. It may seem backwards to hide by glowing, but doing so obscures the squid by removing its shadow. Of course, this does make them easier to detect from above, but attacks at night from seabirds are much less common.
I love this shit. It's like hiding in plain sight. How are you gonna do that? Yeah, I'm gonna put lights on my body and I'm gonna sinus bright. How is that gonna work? Yeah, because the background is white, so I'm gonna blend just right in. Nobody will be able to see my shadow because that is the shadow. Okay.
The bobtail may have the lowest stats
Okay.
of any cephalopod, but its unique and creative way of hiding in plain sight keeps it out of the low tiers. I can't give it too much credit though, because while its strategy for stealth at night is clever, honestly it's not that good at hiding during the daytime, having a seemingly worse ability to camouflage itself due to its bright coloration. At the bottom of B tier, we have the leaf sheep, a sea slug with a truly unique ability called kleptoplasty. Leaf sheep is able to absorb the chloroplasts from the algae it consumes, essentially stealing the algae's photosynthesis ability. This ability generates XP passively over time, allowing them to grow, heal, and regenerate their energy without eating. It's hard to overstate how game-breaking this ability would be if it weren't on a character with otherwise pathetic base stats. For a human, this would basically be like if sitting in the sun provided you with the same benefits as eating well and working.
Oh shit. Solar, if we become solar panel, like yeah, that's some next level shit. Yeah, we would need most of the food and shit, right? Like if we had this ability. Yeah, but this still like this being in the nature like that, like ability to take photosynthesis like that. That's I feel like the future, future mutation and things that we are already studying, shit like this could literally augment humans. One day, who knows?
Out. Unlike some of the sea slugs higher up on this list, the leaf sheep doesn't really have any defensive abilities. But if you want a character that is extremely forgiving in terms of the resource management side of things, the leaf sheep may actually be the best build in the game for anyone looking for that chill casual playstyle. On pretty much the exact opposite end of the spectrum, next in B tier we have the giant squid. Now obviously this thing's HP stat is extreme, with it being the largest mollusk in the game. But one thing I bet you weren't expecting was for it to also have the highest perception stat of any mollusk. I mentioned before that in the dark depths of the ocean, the normal stealth mechanics don't apply. Well, the giant squid is the exception to this. Its eyes are so large, the largest in the game in fact, that even with only a tiny fraction of a percent of sunlight making it to the depths.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you said that, like, what you're talking about, it perfectly makes sense. Big eyes. You don't, even with the little light, like this is the whole point of like high exposure cameras. This is how Hubble works. Takes a high exposure camera. What is high exposure? Keeps the shutter open so it collects light even if there is very little light. So it collects enough light that there's like a full picture that you can't see with your naked eyes. Big eye, right? Capturing very small lights but still enough to cap. This is what big eyes are for. So yeah, big thing, big eyes. Yeah, it makes sense. Perception is high.
The giant squid can still see. This is bad news for all the deep sea builds that assumed camouflage wasn't necessary and spec'd their character accordingly. This incredible eyesight is necessary for more than just hunting though. Being gigantic unfortunately makes you extremely easy to detect via echolocation, so they have to remain vigilant constantly to avoid being ambushed by the Abyssal server's true apex predator. Luckily, their vision has a range just barely more than that of the whale's sonar, so as long as they're on top of their game, they should be able to outmaneuver and avoid attacks.
Need like absorbent paint. Need 5th generation paint on them to be more stealthy.
On this same tier, I'm also going to include the colossal squid, which has many of the same traits as the giant squid, including massive eyes and incredible dark vision.
Colossal.
The colossal squid does have a few subtle differences in its kit though. It's slightly heavier, but also less mobile, relying on ambushes using its 2 extra long arms to capture prey, as opposed to the giant squid's more traditional method of rushing down a target with an array of tentacles. The colossal squid also has hooks on its arms, which do more damage and can inflict bleed buildup, making them much more dangerous for whales to attack, making up for their slower swim speed. However, at the end of the day, both the giant squid and colossal squid have terrible matchups against whales, and because of their large size, their energy upkeep costs are insane. So they have to play pretty much a perfect game to avoid getting smoked. Both are powerful builds if you know what you're doing, but not without their limitations.
I like how the Cthulhu guy, the guy who wrote Cthulhu and all that, like forgetting his name, who wrote the whole book, right? Basically sea monster, that's the book is, right? Probably saw some giant or colossal squid like that with the tentacles or shit, like sperm whale attack or something. One dead scene is like, you know what, I'm gonna write this shit. And that's what basically all that thing is. Cthulhu and all that around, like the tentacles and shit. There you go.
At the bottom of A tier, we have another sea slug, the blue sea dragon. Similar to the leaf
Poison
sheep,
one.
this slug also has the power to copy the ability of its main food source. But in this case, the blue dragon isn't consuming algae, it's consuming jellyfish. The blue sea dragon is able to absorb the venomous nematocysts from the tentacles of their prey, and in doing so, gains a massive buff in the form of an equally deadly sting at the tip of its frills. This is incredible, as the blue sea dragon is able to gain the most powerful ability of the jellyfish faction without any of the awful downsides.
It is insane that that guy doesn't even know he nearly died there. Like, this basically gives you, like, I'm pretty sure, nervous system breakdown. It gives you shock at the whole other level. Your lungs might collapse and all that shit.
Like, you know, being literally brainless and having no control over their own movement. Blue sea dragons also have much better stealth than a lot of sea slugs, using the counter-shading technique with a bright underbelly and dark blue backside, making them hard to see both from above and below. While not quite as OP as some of the cephalopod mollusks, the blue sea dragon definitely stands above all other slugs and snails as a unique and formidable outlier. Next in A tier we have the common octopus, a solid representative of the octopus faction as a whole. It possesses the core abilities that define the octopus build, along with its inherent vulnerabilities. Its 2 standout strengths are stealth.
Is it common or is it mid? Just average octopus. It's like mid octopus, that's what that is. Yeah. Yeah, octopuses are really OP because of how smart they are, right?
And intelligence. The common octopus boasts some of the best stealth in the game, capable of changing both its color and texture to blend seamlessly into virtually any environment. Dense weeds, jagged rocks, or barren seabeds. And if its camouflage fails and it's ever spotted, it can deploy an ink cloud to temporarily debuff the attacker's perception stat, usually buying enough time to escape. However, escape is often its only viable option, as the octopus has
Basically ninjas. Ninjas take shape of shadow, I guess. They hide in the shadow with black clothes and throw smoke. Assassin's Creed, that's what it is. Smoke bomb and run away.
some of the lowest defenses in the game. With no armor whatsoever, any hit it takes can deal devastating damage. Even in a server as perilous as the ocean, where threats abound regardless of armor, the common octopus must play cautiously. Bites from everyday fish can pose a serious risk, so despite its impressive abilities, it requires careful strategy to survive. Speaking of bites though, one lesser known but important ability the octopus has is venom, which it delivers via a bite with its sharp beak. Finally, now's as good a time as any to say that although it's not a combat weakness, the octopus's biggest weakness is its low lifespan. Given that a lot of the octopus's best tricks need to be learned, either by observation or trial and error, the octopus's already powerful intelligence would be a lot more powerful if the devs allowed it to be refined over the course of a few decades, like dolphins, parrots, and humans get. This weakness is
I was about to say that, basically like how humans do, right? So they have to learn over time.
pervasive through the entire cephalopod faction, which is interesting because some of the other mollusks are pretty much the exact opposite. But yeah, this is why despite their many overpowered abilities, it's hard to give any cephalopods a top tier rank.
It's basically like how this is evolution, right? 100 different scenario, a million scenario, but let's just call it 100 different like mutation. All are somewhat different than the other. Fittest of them all will survive and everybody else will die out. That's how evolution works over time, right? This is why when we see certain features in us and everybody like, oh, that's so precise. That is so surgical. That is so perfect. How did nature do that? Yeah, because everybody else that didn't have that same level of things died out. A lot of species died out. Human-like species. So same shit even in the back, like us like humans that evolved from one of our ape ancestors, right? Ape-like ancestors. What if we didn't? That specific mutation didn't happen. There would be no humans. If we'd be asking like, well, okay, there are some other species, some aliens would be asking like, okay, there are gorillas, there are chimpanzees. What if they were this intelligence? What if they were this intelligence? Same like things like this. Okay, octopus is so smart, but if they had a longer life like humans, they would be even better. Yeah, but like the certain mutation that should have happened or hasn't happened yet, hasn't happened or it didn't happen in the past. So there are no octopuses with 80-year lifespan. So there you go. Otherwise, they would be like humans, wouldn't they? At a certain level.
Unless they're truly broken in even more ways than usual. Ranking slightly higher in A tier, the giant octopus adapts on the octopus archetype with one minor tweak, trading some stealth for greater strength. While it retains the ability to change color and texture to blend into its surroundings, and can deploy an ink cloud to escape threats, it's less adept at stealth.
Basically, that's how shit works, even in the video game. Okay, you play stealth because it's fun, not because you have to. Usually always go with a two-handed sword and power, like fuck. Play Skyrim, like you just stealth like that. Play Skyrim, okay. Smithing, enchanting, alchemy, level all that shit up. 200 power attack with a 1000 damage, and armor with like minus 80 physical damage. There you go. You don't need stealth, you don't need nothing, just walk up and kill everything at one shot. Why would you use stealth? Only you want to do that is because it's fun, that's it. Same shit here, okay, big, strong. Why do I care about stealth now?
Than the common octopus due to its larger size, which makes it more noticeable when moving. However, this trade-off comes with significant advantages. Its above-average bulk gives it a wider margin of error in confrontations. Unlike the typically less brawny octopus builds, the giant octopus boasts impressive physical power, with arms capable of wrestling mid-sized sharks and a beak that deals substantial slicing damage, in addition to being venomous. It also shares the same high intelligence that other octopuses do, enabling it to tackle problems and improvise solutions on the spot. Though it shares the same lack of armor as other octopuses, leaving it exposed to heavy damage, the giant octopus's enhanced strength and unique abilities more than offset its reduced stealth, marking it as a force to be reckoned with. Next in A tier we have the Humboldt squid, also known as the Red Devil. The Humboldt squid is the wolf of the ocean. It doesn't have the best stats in any one category. It's not the fastest, it's not the largest, and it's not the deadliest. However, it is well above average in all of those categories, and that, plus some impressive hunting tactics, makes it one of the most fearsome mollusks in the game. During the day, Humboldt squid mains hang out in the deep sea out of sight. But as it gets dark, the hunt begins, and the squid rise from the depths to attack. They hunt in packs, coordinating with each other via pulsing red and white light. These feeding frenzies can tear through schools of fish in an instant, and then return back to the depths before builds like the dolphin can arrive to challenge them. Now, obviously communicating with light pulses has the disadvantage of giving away your location, so
basically Navy SEALs of the ocean, I guess. Why the fuck not? Okay, surgical, precise, operational. There are squads, there are teams, there are sergeants. Do your job, get back home, job well done. That's what that shit is.
Faster characters will usually be able to avoid getting caught in the frenzy. But still, the fear factor alone of getting caught surrounded by large glowing red squid has to earn it a spot in A tier. And last in A tier we have the Mimic Octopus. The Mimic Octopus is a smaller mollusk with below average stats for its archetype. However, the Mimic Octopus uses its color change ability in a truly unique way, to shapeshift into the form of other marine characters. In doing so, it can trick other players into misplaying, in many different ways. The most obvious strategy is just to mimic a character with a powerful venomous ability, like a lionfish or sea snake. This will cause predators to leave you alone for fear of getting stung or bitten.
I like a chameleon ability, right? In those video games like Witcher 3, right? Like Witcher 3, who was that? I'm forgetting their name. What are jinns or shapeshifters basically? We just shapeshift and there you go. I'm pretty sure there's also a mission where we fight Geralt himself, right? Basically that level of shapeshift into something dangerous and people will leave you away.
But this technique can also be used on offense to trick a target into a false sense of security, by mimicking something less dangerous like a starfish or flatfish. Now, while this is all extremely impressive, it's worth noting that the Mimic Octopus's options are fairly limited. It's most effective at mimicking characters that already share its black and white stripe appearance. When it attempts to mimic something else, it's admittedly a lot less convincing. And if their disguise fails, their below-average base stats leave them in a pretty vulnerable position should an enemy attack. A high-skill, high-reward technique, and one that deserves some pretty high recognition, but one that's also easy to overestimate. It's clever, but not quite.
Yeah, it's a fun playthrough when you have to gamble away, right? You put all your chips into one basket. If that basket fails, it's uphill battle. That's when video game is fun. But in this case, it's life, apparently.
Broken. Okay, we've finally reached the S tier. If you've watched up until this point and are enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate it if you took a second to subscribe to the channel. Thanks. At the bottom of S tier, we have another small mollusk with blue accents, the blue-ringed octopus. This is one of the smallest octopus builds in the game, but you wouldn't know it if all you saw was its power stat. The blue-ringed octopus has the deadliest venom of any mollusk, even deadlier than the geographic cone.
I mean, those bright blue purplish rings is a clear giveaway that don't touch this thing.
Venom is the same neurotoxin found in pufferfish, which can one-shot almost anything within only a few minutes. Because of the blue-ringed octopus's insanely high damage, this build opts for the aposomatism technique, where rather than attempting to hide from predators using camouflage, when threatened, it instead boldly asserts its presence with vibrant neon blue markings all along its body. In doing so, it is essentially flexing on other predator players, saying it has no reason to fear them and daring them to make a move. This strat is common among players.
I'm poisonous. Come here, touch me. Come here. Nothing's gonna happen. Come here, touch me. That shit is next level. I love that.
With powerful toxic abilities, and most players quickly learn that bright colors mean danger. Now, one of the usual drawbacks of this ability is that it dramatically cuts the player's own stealth stat. While this trade-off makes
yeah, it works at a level when it works, but somebody who's too overpowered, who doesn't give a shit about any poison or venom, yeah, for them, like, you're just easy picking.
Sense when it comes to scaring off predators. If you're a predator yourself, this makes the task of catching prey harder, as they'll be able to see you coming more easily. But because of the octopus's innate color change ability, the blue-ringed octopus is able to switch its intimidation ability on and off, allowing it to remain stealthy when it needs to. Now, of course, because it's on the small side, there's always a chance an opponent could overwhelm the octopus and take it down before it had the chance to counterattack. But more often than not, this small octopus is turning the tide on anything that dares challenge it. While it's definitely a glass cannon, the blue-ringed octopus's incredible stats and unique ability to subvert one of its major weaknesses earns it a spot in S tier. And on the topic of subverting weaknesses, next in S tier we have the coconut octopus. This is the octopus build with the highest intelligence stat of any mollusk, and the only one that makes tool use a core part of its strategy. The octopus's biggest weakness is its pathetic defense stat, and this was actually a direct nerf to overpowered cephalopod builds of the past. Many cephalopods used to have thick, sturdy shells like other mollusks do, way back during the Ordovician expansion. By using their incredibly high intelligence and tool use ability, the coconut octopus is able to regain access to heavy armor by equipping the shells of defeated.
Yeah, I was about to say, one of the octopus thing he talked about, like how they don't have time, like they don't have lifespan to be intelligent. I'm like, yeah, if they were like, they would just make chain mill and like all the metal armor shit, they'll be fine. This one, literally, I'm gonna take armor, like I'm gonna make a makeshift armor. There you go.
Scallops and clams. This makes them much less vulnerable to being picked off by a random attack from a fish or bird. In addition, kind of similar to the mimic octopus, most players don't have their guard up around a clam, so the shells also provide excellent cover to ambush opponents from. And after scoring a win, they can retreat to the safety of their shell to avoid getting it stolen, similar to leopards dragging their food up into trees to avoid hyenas. But shells aren't the only tools the coconut octopus has learned to incorporate into its combat repertoire. Using its water siphon, it can also launch debris at fish, making them one of the only builds in the game with access to a ranged attack. This is excellent at dealing chip damage without leaving the safety of the shell, meaning they don't fall into the same trap as clams by relying on defense with no means of counterattacking. Overall, this is truly one of the most impressive showcases of tool use in the entire game other than humans, as it legitimately subverts one of the weaknesses of the typical octopus build without sacrificing any of the perks. An easy S tier rank. And now our final S tier, the cuttlefish. The cuttlefish has a number of impressive stats, including quite literally the highest stealth stat in the game. It has the most advanced version of the color change ability, and is able to swap between colors at such an incredible rate that it can basically animate its skin. This means that in addition to standard camouflage, the cuttlefish can also use its appearance to confuse and hypnotize its prey, or
introducing next generation of stealth technology. Camouflage. Better than octopus in every single way, and octopus literally got pissed off in the comments. Obviously, jokingly.
Startle and intimidate its predators. Though it may not have the ability to fire projectiles like the coconut octopus, its grappling arms give it a deceptively long reach, often catching players off guard and setting them up to get comboed into the cuttlefish's venomous bite. Even though the cuttlefish has no abilities which buff its defense, actually landing a hit on this agile and mesmerizing character is genuinely one of the most difficult things in the game. Their speed stat is a lot closer to that of a squid than an octopus, even though the rest of their abilities all align much more closely to the octopus. The cuttlefish combines the most powerful elements from both the squid, like high maneuverability and long reach, and the octopus, like intelligence, venom, and color changing, into one overpowered build. And
Wait a minute. What should we call this? It feels a lot like squid, but it also feels a lot of octopus. You know, fuck it, it's cuttlefish. Cuttlefish, there you go.
for that, I'm ranking it as the #1 mollusk in the game. And that's the tier list. Overall, the viability of mollusks is super inconsistent. Best cephalopods are truly busted, but the faction is also filled with a lot of suboptimal jank and AFK farming builds. So there really is something for everyone here, from meta tryhards
From slug to cuttlefish, like that's a disparity, insane disparity.
to low-tier heroes. Now, knowing which traits and abilities to invest in can be a difficult choice. Luckily for you, I've partnered with the
It's a
game
choice.
Cell to Singularity to provide you the perfect training simulation. Cell to Singularity is a scientifically accurate, non-fiction idle clicker game where you begin as a single cell and have to unlock traits
Oh my god, what a perfect promotional thing, right? Like they're like, which is the creator we should like sponsor? Oh, I know, Tierzoo, because that's what basically this is. Yeah, but go to original video page and from there support this channel. Yeah, Mollusk Tier List. I didn't know mollusks contain all these squids and all that. Cthulhu, basically that's what that is, right? Cthulhu tier list, that's what this shit is. What is it called? Like, I'm keep forgetting. Like, what is that like whole lore called, right? And the guy who I'm forgetting his name. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I still haven't watched OSP video anymore. Did I watch it? I don't know. I have to check it. But yeah, there you go. It seems that some of the giant squids and like like colossal squids, big octopuses, all the way to small one, poisonous one. Octopus feels like one of those creatures that might have certain mutation in the future that they become really dominant, like human, like dominant in ocean. Well, yeah, in the end of the day, if you're an ocean bearing thing, like you're gonna be limited, right? If you can't come on land, you're not gonna be equal to humans in any way or concept, right? That's what if something becomes too intelligent but doesn't have like opposing thumb on the land, let's just say, like how much limited is that going to be evolved into anything that's human? No, it's not. Crows might become really like intelligent. Okay, what are they gonna do with it? Like it's very limited. Like physically they can't do much stuff. So that shit type of thing, yeah. Alright, well, I guess I'll see you next time.